Good morning. Still caught me off guard. Good morning and welcome to your Daily Game Face. I'm Dr. Kim Lannon and I'm here with Lou. Who is Lou? Yep. He's in a mood today.
No, I got technical issues, so
Well,
trying to make them all
you
work.
are in a mood today.
Yeah.
You're not your normal bantery self with me in a good way today. You're sort of like snippy. Did you have a bad
Snippy?
night?
No, I didn't have a bad night.
I can tell. It's been a bad night. Anyway, so here we are. I'm very excited because right off the top, I have two things. One, I have waiting in the back room of this show, Chris DiOrio, who I've been trying to get on because basically I hadn't asked him yet, but I had asked him, but not. But I had been trying to get him on for, forever because I wanted to have him on after the marathon. And then my marathon went to poop. As we all know. And so all the inquiring minds wanted to know, how do I feel? That was the question of the week. Am I better? And did I run? So I did run. I ran on Saturday. It was beautiful. It was actually almost a repeat of Marathon Monday. It was about 72-ish at its peak. It was a tailwind almost the whole way, which was very nice. And I noticed that I got burnt. And this morning I was like, oh, I'm peeling. But it went fabulous. I did get a little queasy, not because of running. I think it's just, I wasn't completely 100%. I had a little funk going on still, but I was not. If I wait longer, I hadn't run in 12 days and I could tell.
Yeah.
I had trained other things, but I had not run. And it was, by the time I got to mile 22 or 23, I was feeling it in Brooklyn, coming into Brooklyn. I was like, oh God, this is like death.
Which hill did you get queasy on?
It was not on none of the heartbreaks. It was after. So after you get past BC and you come down the hill and there's four more like little rolling hills. I actually got a little queasy just after. I think it's you come down around into like, Cleveland Square, and you make the bank over the, railroad tracks. I was like,
Did you meet anyone else?
And it was awesome because John literally just drove up ahead of me every mile or two and would just be waiting somewhere with water, saltines are still my friend. Saltines and graham crackers. I swear I'm going to keep them in business. No plug for them. But I had a banana. I didn't have any problems per se, but I did have a little quease. But I finished. If you go on Facebook, you can see if you're friends with me on Facebook, but I don't think I posted it up here, but I can, on your Daily Game Face. I posted my finish. And so interestingly enough, and this is sort of a segue into having my amazing guest that I have on today. I had a lot of naysayers in the way that, and I talked about this in previous shows about the fact that like, why bother doing it? It's over. You're not going to get a medal. It's not official. Well, if you know me, that's not how I work. Yep. Because I said last week and the week before, like this is one, it was devastating for me to get to the start line and not be able to take off. But second of all, I had to finish. I had to it's a mind gap that if you leave that open, you have to close the loop. So I closed the loop and I was so excited. I cried at the end. So like right at the end of the video, you can see it, but John shut it off right as I was like, because it was exciting for me to finish. And, nobody had a clue what the hell I was doing out there, but, I didn't wear my bib, but I did wear my shirt and it was a great run. I mean, it was perfect. People have asked me my time. It was not official, so it doesn't really matter. It wasn't for the time, but I did actually, for me, do a PR on the course, of course, because because it wasn't on time. But I'm not announcing that because it doesn't matter. And I'm signed up for another marathon that's a Boston qualifier, and God hope I can do it. I mean, I can do it. I'll finish it, but God hope I can make
Salt Lake City.
Yeah, Salt Lake City.
Yep.
Here we come.
I think it's interesting that people, all their value for the Boston Marathon is about their name in a log somewhere and getting a medal and finishing on that day. And it's like, it's not even the majority of what this is all about.
No. Well, for a lot of people, unfortunately, it is. And so therefore, I get that. I do get that. But for me, Yeah, if I was, winning, if I was in the elite group, maybe, but I'm not there for that. I'm there for like an accomplishment because this was my 10th in a row. By the way, I still count that. And Scott Graham, who is listening, who just said your game, your rules, you ran it, you finished, done. He also was lovely enough and gracious enough to say to, because I posted up there, he says to him, it counts. It counts. And people have been lovely and saying
Yep.
it counts. And I believe it counts. It doesn't matter that the BA doesn't care.
So you got more of why are you doing this than you got, can I come run with you?
No, I got come run. I'll come run with you,
Yeah.
but I definitely got an overwhelming like, why bother? What does it matter? Just do it next year. Like a lot of that and that.
Yeah.
And and
Don't
and
get
I
it.
got a couple other things, which is one of the reasons why I love Chris is because I think his resiliency to this kind of stuff that we get, and we're going to talk today about being a back of the packer and how when you're also not a qualified runner for the Boston Marathon and what that means to
Yeah.
people and lots of other things. But can Chris hear me right now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Because I just want, because I helpfully stalked him on his Facebook page. But I love, he
Stop
has
using
so many.
that word.
You what?
Stop using
I
that
know.
word.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
just looking up his stuff because I'm saying it funny. It's not in a bad
I
way.
understand.
Don't pick at me.
I'm picking at you funny, not in a
Okay,
bad
you're
way.
picking at me funny. I love the banter. It's just so good. You're not really on it today though.
Okay.
But I found this great thing from a couple of years ago. I think it was last year's race that he did, but I loved what he said at the end. And he has some he's a great writer too. I think he should write a book. I'm giving him all these things. But last year, he came across and there's a video of him and he has his, I believe, grandchildren and they're hugging him. And he says, the only medal I need is the one that literally ran to me that I got to wrap around my own neck and another around my waist.
Mhm.
And it's different from back here, but you don't need to be part of the race to know you won what really counts. And I read that and I get chills and I get a little tear because yeah. And there's so many great stories out there like that. But I just think Chris embodies a lot of that. And he had a couple other stories up and we'll talk about it. So it is my pleasure and my excitement to bring on Chris DiOrio and have us join. Yay!
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is exciting and scary.
I don't know why it'd be scary. Exciting. I'm
He's
excited.
watched us interact. That's why he's scared.
Oh, because I know.
I'm afraid of the banter.
Yeah, but it won't come at you. Don't worry.
Oh, good. Give it time. It usually does.
So Chris, I am very happy in all seriousness to have you here. I have been talking about you on the show a couple times throughout the marathon season, just because I've been following, that's a better word. I've been following along some of the stuff that happens, but to people, and it's not just you, and it's clearly not just me when you get the flack back, but what I wanted to talk about in all seriousness, and then we can talk about some of the naysayers and stuff, but there's a whole thing about marathon runners and runners that if you're not up front, you're not winning. Why are you doing it? And it's not about that. There's a reason why people run and everybody has their why. And I think that nobody focuses on back of the packers, and what back of the packers are for people that are listening is people that are not up in the front. They don't start at the elite. They don't start in the first couple waves. They start back where Chris and I start. We start back with the charity teams. We start back with the place where people are, some people are qualified and they start and they raise money, but some people are not. And most of us are just people. They're out there doing it for an amazing cause. We have passion about it and we love the sport of running for our own reasons and we do it. So in that, I wanted to say, okay, Chris, let's talk about being a back of the packer. And that's where we'll open the door for you to start talking to us today.
Okay. I mean, being in the back of the pack is just the experience is just the same, just without all the people and without all of the pomp on the course. There's a different kind of mentality that you kind of have to sit with to be in the back of the pack, and it's a challenge. It can be a challenge, and doing it from the back of the pack. I mean, if you look at there's 30,000+ people who ran the race on the day, and only one person won, and only a few actually made money doing this. And they're, or the professionals say, does that mean that everybody else doesn't count? They all are there. and they're all traversing the same 26.2. And if you look at your watch when you're done, it's never 26.2. For me, it was 26.79 because you veer to the right and you high five the little kid, and you veer to the left and you high five the guy holding the solo cup. And you're never running a straight line. But the mental part of it for folks who don't know, if you haven't talked about it, they start pulling up the course around you. And usually for me, somewhere, because I'm slow, I'm never going to run a qualifying time. But all of a sudden the course becomes dismantled as you go, and the water stations disappear. For me, around Natick, the water stations disappear, and now you've got to put this in your head. Okay, how am I going to, one more thing after all of the training, 20 weeks, one of the things that you don't think about is, how am I going to conserve my water? How am I going to make sure that I don't run out of water at crucial times? How am I going to do all of these things and all of the nutritional things? Now you've got to add this into the mix. Then they start pulling up the med tents. By the time I get to Newton, there are no professionals at the medical tents. And all of these things that you're now thinking about as you're doing the course add to the potential difficulty. And if you're not in it for the right reason and with the right motivation and with the right strength behind you, you're going to fail. And for me, that's not an option. And I think for a lot of the people who run the course for charity and from the back of the pack, failure is not an option for a variety of reasons. And whether it's born into you, whether it's bred into you, I'm a son of a coach. I've been around college athletes since I was old enough to stand and throw things, and lift things and put bats away and put balls in the rack and stuff. So I come from the mentality of, you start it, you finish it, and you go strong the whole way, as strong as you can. Other athletes, I know you're of a similar ilk, that if I'm going to go out there, I'm going to finish it. And that's really the essence of running as a back of the pack person is, you're not out there to win. You're not out there for the glory of the run. And some are, especially especially this year, because they changed the qualifying time, and so many people that thought they were going to qualify suddenly did not. And there was a lot of backlash, but initially backlash because charity runners, they save 10,000 spots for charity runners. And these people now who didn't qualify feel slighted that people like me, they see, and some of the stuff that you bought your way in by running for charity.
Right. Well, and that's the same thing. So I have the same thing, and Lou and I've talked about it on the show, is that people put us, because I'm there with you. I do this for charity, and I have done it other years not for charity, but I would rather do it for charity, even if I qualified, because that's important to me. That's why I think it's important to say that there are people in the charity back of the Packers that actually have qualified as well. And then they raise the money too, because that's how they feel it's so strong for doing the race. So, but I also wonder how, because, we talk about good mental health and good wellness. How do you, Chris, handle the comments and about like what you were just saying, like being the back of the packer because you bought your way in? I saw the post that came up that you posted right after the marathon, that the person was talking about being a real runner, and he did it anonymously, and it was kind of cowardly in my opinion, but he wrote all about that. And that you actually have to run the race and all these things when you, me, and 10,000 other people are out there walking. We're doing it at our own pace. We're doing all those things. What do you say in your own head? Because I know you don't respond, I don't think, to them, but what do you say to yourself so that doesn't get at you?
I rarely respond because it's just feeding the beast. But my stock response, my joke response is, I'm 300 pounds, so obviously I eat it. So I take that and I eat that, and it becomes fuel. I run for charity. I run for me, particularly Mass General Hospital's Pediatric Cancer Center. I run for people who can't do it for themselves. I run for that and for these wonderful kids and their families. But I also run because since I've started on this journey, the number of people who, for every negative I get 3 or 4 that will private message me or put something directly on one of my social media posts that says, I'm a big person, or I'm not an athlete, and you have inspired me to get out there and run, or you have inspired me to start running again, that they had put it down and they had put it away, and now they've gotten back into it. I'm running because people who think they might not be able to do it can see someone like me doing it.
Right.
And then that gives them the impetus to get up and do the couch to 5K. It's how I started.
Yep.
I'm a little bit over 300 pounds right now. I was 462 pounds. And I had a gastric sleeve surgery and lost weight. And I said to myself, once I get down to where I am not going to destroy my knees by running, I want to run. I want to get back out there and do something that I've never done before. And so it went to 5K, and couch to 5K, get there. And I said, well, you know what? Let's move on. Let's do the 10. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, okay, well, this is just if I run 4 10Ks, it's almost a marathon. I can do, and so it goes on. So you run.
Isn't it amazing how that catches you? You're like, I'll do 5K, now do 10. Oh, it's a half. What's another 13?
It's if I can do this, I can multiply it times 2 and throw some hills in there, and I'll be fine. But so you run for the charity, you run for the kids, you run for the cause, you run because other people are up there, buoying you and saying, this is a good thing that you're doing, because now this has given me the impetus to do this myself. But I tell you, there's also that part of me that wants to do this, because for every one of these people who say you shouldn't be doing it, this is my, it's a mobile middle finger to all of these people who say you can't do it. I can't do it. I did it. And I've done it 5 times now. This is my 5th marathon. I run New York and then 4 Bostons. So, you telling me I can't do it? Fine. Get out there and do it with me. Do something other than, sit behind your keyboard and tell me what I can't do.
Right.
Because
or that you shouldn't be doing.
My skin, you can't do it. Unless you're in me, you can't tell me you can't do this.
Right.
So there's that. So
I know the theme here is your response to this negativity, and I appreciate that, but I want to deviate from that for a second, because let's put the personal pathology aside of these people complaining about this. Do they understand? I'm in the sports media. I've been a sports fan all my life. I'm a Boston guy all my life. The only reason I give a rat's ass about the Boston Marathon is you guys.
Yeah.
Not the elite runners. I don't care who wins. I don't care guys who are running who consider themselves runners and qualified. I don't care. That's not what makes the Boston Marathon interesting or even noble. It's you guys that make it noble. No one would pay attention to them if it weren't for you guys.
It's one of the reasons why Boston is as special as it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've got Kipchoge and you've got Cisse and you've got all of these but this is their job.
No idea who you're talking about.
Those are the winners of the
No, I understand. I heard by context, but
and Helen. Well, if I'm saying African names, just assume that it's probably a marathon runner. But and Helen Obiri and the folks on the women's side and Des Linden from in 2018. But they're all professionals. Their job
is what they do.
Get up and train to run. Me, my own story, and everybody's got a story. There's 30,000 of them in the naked city, and mine is just one. In order for me to train to do what I have to do, I've got to get up at 4:15 every morning, because my law office is in my home, which means I'm taking care of my kids and getting them out the door, because my wife is upstairs and she's got her job and I have my office downstairs. So I'm up at 4:15 so I can get my run in by 6 o'clock, so I can get home and get a load of laundry in and get the kids' clothes ready and get them out the door on the bus, and then take care of my 4-year-old. The 2 kids that were running at me are not my grandkids. They're my active kids. I'm second wife, new life, new wife, new kids.
Big assumption made. Whoops.
Gray hair, it gets you. It gets everybody. It gets me in the Stop and Shop every time.
You do my homework.
That's fine. But I've got to get them out the door, and then I've got a law practice to run, and then I've got all of the other things, and taking care of the kids at home. I don't have the time in my day. And my wife is a triathlete. She's training for triathlon. She's going to be running in New York in September. She's doing her training at night, because she can't do it during the day. And that's when I have to do those things. And so I'm fitting in 40, 50, 60 miles a week on my off time.
Well,
Right?
and so I think that as when I was reading a lot about you, Chris, and obviously following that some of the stuff you do, you and I are very similar. And I kept saying that over the past couple of days because I sit a lot. In my job, I'm right. I sit 12, sometimes 14 hours a day,
Mhm.
and people are always like, "When do you train? When do you have time?" I'm like you. I'm either up at the butt crack of dawn doing something crazy, or I leave work at 7 or 8 or 9 at night, and I'll be on the treadmill to get the run in or to get the last miles in that I didn't complete. And it's like people don't understand that. Yeah, we don't have the day to go out and train as a profession. We have to
Yeah.
do these things off of our seat, so to speak, to just really do it. And it's really hard, but it's amazing. But it's still really hard because people don't understand we aren't the same as a person who has this as their job. We're not being paid $150,000 to win a race or however much they're winning. We're actually doing life. We're having a
Yeah.
full-time job, and
Yeah.
and this is like what I posted in back in January when I was running up in my
Yeah.
other home. It was
Mhm.
snowing. I was running up in the mountains. And I was raising money at the same time on a video while holding the phone, going, "Somebody give me money for my charity," because
Yeah.
you have to do all those things at the same time plus work.
Well,
And it's a very big difference.
and I completely forget. I mean, doing the training is one thing, but you've got to live your life, train, and then because I'm a charity runner, you've got to put the time in and do the planning for events and things of that nature, and the daily grind of bothering your friends and family for throw money here, throw money, and it's you're starting in November for a race that runs in April,
Right.
and you've got to get to some charities looking for 10,000, some 12, Mass General 7,500, but you're raising money, and you're always trying to do better than you did the last year, and that's for me that's also an important thing. It's the old I'm going to age myself as if my physical appearance isn't aging me enough. I grew up with the Jerry Lewis thing. Labor Day sitting down and watching the telethon, and his goal was always, I want to do $1 better than last year. And so to me, that's what I'm saying. I did this last year. I need to do $1 better at least. So it's a lot of hard work.
No,
Adding into all of the other things, trying to raise money to run a family, and then also trying to raise money to benefit, kids with,
well, and that's why I love, I mean, so charity teams, Susan Hurley, we have all the slogans all over all of our materials that we're overqualified. And that's why it's not to be boisterous and like obnoxious. It's the fact that we're overqualified
Right.
because we have all those pieces there. We're not just out training and that's the only thing we're doing. We're doing life on life's terms, raising money and training and whatever else comes in our way. Right. So we're doing all those things. And I think and that's why I love Chris's story, is because you can tell the depth of all those pieces for you. And I believe, I hope I'm right. I think you raised now so far almost $50,000, right, for Mass General Pediatric Cancer, right?
$48,615 as of right now. So
Can people still give to you right now? Is it still open?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, good.
Our fundraising, I think we closed down on May 10th.
Okay, so we closed already. So if people want, so Lou, can we get that link? Because I would like, so people, Mass General Pediatric
Yeah,
Children.
it's through Give and Gain, and again, and my charity I run through Mass General Hospital's pediatric oncology team. So Mass General has 3 separate marathon teams, but the primary team is pediatric oncology, and this is, I believe, our 28th year as a team. Dr. Howard Weinstein, who's the director of pediatric oncology, 28 years ago asked then John Hancock for 10 bibs, and so they gave him 10. And now the team has 163 runners as of this year. So we've been
Wow.
growing ever since. But we also have a team for home base, dealing with PTSD and
Veterans.
invisible wounds of war, and also for emergency services. And if you don't think that emergency services needs the money, just remember what happened in 2013, where marathon runners finished their run. The stories that around it, but people who ran the marathon finished their run and kept running to Mass General to give blood.
Right.
And to help folks. And this is not just the elites. These are the folks who run in the 3 and the 4 and the 5 hour range,
Right.
that are busting their butts to get over 26.2. And then even though the race had stopped, the explosion had occurred, they kept going.
Yep.
because there was need and the emergency services was there to help at Mass General and multiple other hospitals in Boston. But that's the kind of stuff that they do, and that's what they prepare for, and that's what they have their team for.
So let's get the link up for his, because if we could get him to 50,000 today, and everyone that's listening over the next week, because I know people will re-listen to this, if we can get the link in by the end of,
Do you have a specific link, Chris, or is
it's
it
giving,
Let me, oh goodness gracious, that's
oh, we're putting him on the spot. But we will have the link up so that people, I would love for people to be able to get you to 50,000.
I mean, I have the Mass General Pediatric Cancer Research
but it's going to
Foundation.
be, it will be
but
under
yeah,
his Give and Gain, like mine was.
if you look through Give and Gain, and if you just look up my name, Chris DiOrio, it'll take you to the link. And my charity number is 64706. But if you just look up my name on Give and Gain, it will take you to my campaign.
And so, Chris, what made you decide to run for them? Was there something specific that made you decide to run for them, or just like?
Initially, I started out just looking for a charity to run for. I knew that I was going to have to do that. My friend Kelly, who is a nurse in the pediatric oncology department at Boston at Mass General, said, we have a team, and sign up. And I went to visit her at the hospital, and I saw these kids. And as the father of little ones and two older ones as well, I've got a 22-year-old and a 20-year-old as well. I went in there, and all I could think of is for these parents and what it is to them that adults get, if they get some type of cancer or something of that nature. A lot of times it is environmental, it is lifestyle and things of that nature. These are 18-month-old kids, 10-month-old kids, 5-year-old kids. They're not smoking 2 packs a day. They're not eating red meat until they're not all the things that are supposedly carcinogenic. They're not doing these things on their own. They're stricken with no fault of their own, and they've got to suffer through the same thing that adults suffer through and not know what's going on.
Right.
And have and their parents have to have conversations that they never would think that they would have to have about, what happens if this doesn't work? What happens if the treatments fail? What ifs? No. And as a parent, that just bored its way into my heart, that this is where I want to be. This is what I want to run for kids, and for these kids specifically. And so I signed up. I was very blessed that they accepted me 4 years ago. I ran my first one in 2021 for them back in the October year, when they ran the marathon in October. But that was my first one through, and it just. The short answer is, why do you run for Mass General Pediatric Cancer? Why wouldn't I?
Right.
Why wouldn't anybody? This is a tremendous foundation, and their cure rates now for leukemia and other the traditional childhood cancers is up over 90% now. So the money that we raise goes to that. It also goes to quality of life stuff for the parents. I mean, these are folks who have to spend a lot of their times and a lot of their days and weeks sometimes in a hospital. And so taking care of them, making sure that they're okay, and making sure that the kids are, having as much of a normal life as they possibly can, given the strictures of what they're having to endure. And it is endurance. I run for 26 miles and it hurts. It hurts before.
Really? It hurts?
Oh man, does it? Oh boy, does it
No,
hurt.
it does not hurt.
Come on now. Folks who ask me, did you recover? And I say, well, now it's just normal old man pain as opposed to old man who ran 26 miles pain. But it hurts. And then every time it hurts, every little knee twinge, every time my foot feels like it's numb, all I have to do is think about these kids and recognize that every step that I'm taking, they've taken 100. Without ever moving, because of what they've had to go through and the pain that they have to go through, that no person should, but certainly no child should ever have to go through this. So that's my why, my big why.
I love the why. Now, Chris is wearing his shirt, if I recognize it correctly. Oh, everyone can see this if you're
There it
watching
is.
it on live, or if you go to YouTube later, you can see Chris's story up on his Given Game page, and it's in the link here. And if you need it, also you can also contact me. But it is now up on the link, and his story is up on the side. So if you see that, you can watch or read about it. I was just lost my train of thought. I was going to ask you. Oh, I was going to say, Chris is wearing the shirt I believe that he wore from the marathon, and
Yep.
if you can see it, he has names on his shirt. There it is. There's all the names, and I believe, tell the story about that, because I'm sure I'll mess it up, because I have like all the different things you were doing around like your. I want to talk about your spaghetti night in Broxton. I love that, because I want to talk about that for a different
Yep.
reason, but
Yep.
also for this. But tell us about the shirt, and because I thought this was a fantastic idea, and I see a lot of people do this.
It's a it's a great way to fundraise. One more thing where you can just say, if you have someone in your life who is a fighter, who is a cancer warrior, whether they fought and didn't win the fight, or if they're still fighting, or if there's someone who fought and got through, I want to carry them with me. And so I will, if you make any, at this point, it used to, when I first started, it was like, at least $25. Now I don't care. Give me give me $1. I don't care. But I will put your name on my jersey, and I will carry them with me over the 26.2. And then I make sure that on the back of my shirt, which I'm not going to show right now, but is the donors, the folks who have made these requests and put these names on. I do it because I want to carry them, and the names here are, some of these are folks that are, for want of a better term, legacy names. The first name I ever put on this jersey is Maddie McCoy, 11-year-old girl who dies after suffering through rhabdomyoblastoma, which is a brain cancer. Beautiful kid, gymnastic singer, performer, and just but a brain tumor that has a 90% death rate. And her mom and I had performed on stage a number of times, and so when and they have a charity of their own, but they aren't a BAA charity. So I said, can I run for Maddie? And so I put Maddie's name on my jersey. And then other folks, when I did that, said, can you put can you put this person's name on? Can you put and so it's gotten to a point where it's not just kids. It's any cancer warrior. One of my favorite choreographers that I've performed for multiple times. She's a fighter and a winner. She, fought through breast cancer. Her name is here. It just, putting the names here allows me to carry them, and it's a great thing for their families to see. And I had a really touching experience as a result of one of the names. Just this marathon, as right around mile 8, I saw that the water stations were going up earlier than usual, that they were pulling the water stations down. And so as I'm running, I posted, they're making this almost impossible at this point now. There's going to be no water for the next 18 miles, unless I start moving my butt to get there faster. And as I'm running through Natick, right near the church that's on the left-hand side, near the town green, a woman and her husband start yelling at me. And they're like running next to me along the way, and they're following me, and they're yelling at me. And so I slow down, and it is the mother of one of these people, Kara Moulter, who is a friend of mine who passed from cancer at age 34. And her mom asked to put her name on my shirt. And she was out there running along with me. She saw me say that there's not any water. She went from her home to Natick to bring water to me. And I'm gonna cry, and I apologize.
You can cry.
She hugged me and said, "This is from Kara. Just remember that she's on your shoulder and not just on your chest for the rest of the way." And her husband was there, and he had tears, and it was just, it was a lot at that point. But to know that someone, I had never met her mother before, and that she would go out of her way to leave her home to meet me in Natick to bring water so that I could
that's so
have that
beautiful.
is just it's the power of these people and what these families go through, and it's just more evidence of just how amazing the race is and how important it is to run for charity because these folks care. They care beyond just the money that they donate. They care about they came out and they cared about me. And she wasn't alone. It happened a few other times during the race where just completely unbidden people just appear out of nowhere. I don't fall into the religious or faith aspect, but it's literally like angels coming out of the sky and getting in your path and helping along the way.
Well, I think Chris too. I think I think that's a amazing story. And I think that because you keep people so involved, which is I'm giving you a moment there. I think because you keep people so involved on your social media in terms of how you are doing, in terms of everything leading up and what you're doing, and then on the race day, because I got to see it because I was laying at home throwing up.
I'm so
So I was watching everything you were doing, and I could. So every so often he would post up, and I would be like, "Just keep going, don't
yeah,
worry about it." Because I remember
thank
him
you.
posting up
Thank
like
you.
that whole thing, and I was thinking, "Oh my God, there's no water, there's no like." And then it was getting darker, and then I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh my God!" And then I saw how you get to the 1.68 mile, and I was
yeah,
like, it was dark, and I'm like, oh, "Just keep
yeah.
going, you're almost there, you're almost there," and hoping to send the vibes through my couch. But but there are that story. I think that because I can share just in the fact that, and I won't go into any stories, but I can just share that spirit of being a charity runner and being a back of the packer or being at that point. People are there's so many more amazing people out there that will do for you or that get it, even if they don't know your why. They create part of why your why is there. If that makes sense.
Right.
I think that woman, the mom, and that was a testament to why we do this, or why it's important to do it for charity.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to, but there's this big payoff in terms of what you're doing for others, because when people do that and say, here, or you get an attaboy or an attagirl, or they give you the love and support, like, oh yeah, this is why I keep going. This is why even if there's 10 miles left and I'm dying, I'm still going to keep going because of that. And even if you don't have someone come up, you always have that in the back of of your head, because you know what your sign up is. Most people I've met ever in the charity teams and charity running, nobody's just doing it to be able to run the race, right, Chris? I mean,
No,
they're not. It's
it's
a commitment.
extremely rare.
Yeah,
This year, I think there might have been more of that. Um, because of the number of people that got sort of cut off. So I know that
right,
there were probably a lot more folks who saw this as the only way that they were going to get on the course is to
right,
go raise money. But a lot of the charity teams, when the qualifying line was done, a lot of the charity teams had already
right.
started picking their teams and had locked in a lot of their teams. So folks were sort of scrambling to get on the course. So maybe this year might have been a little different, but the vast majority of folks out there are just, I'm doing it for charity. This is why I'm doing it. There's no glory in this other than the internal
You're
knowledge that
doing it for
I
you.
did something that less than 1% of the world's population has even attempted, much less completed.
And so I just wanted to read you, because Mary, who's in Florida. Hi, Mary. She said, I'm amazed that anyone could ever criticize Chris for what he's doing. Chris, you are incredible. And we have that. And then,
I don't get it. I don't get it.
I know. Well, we talk about
I can explain it. I've had other folks talk to me about it. It's
let's hear your thought on it.
Well, wait a second. Let me start here.
Yeah.
So you have that thought. If someone has that thought, okay, you have your thought, whatever it is. And you talked about the guys the people who didn't qualify anymore because of the change in the qualifying time. I understand that kind of angst, but to go out and express it, and furthermore, to express it to that person,
yeah.
What's going on in your life?
That's because what I told you.
And most of the folks who do it will do it. They'll never do it in public. And I think a lot of the folks that who know me or who have followed me know that I have a rule that I, as an attorney and as a constitutional professor, constitutional law professor, when it comes to I don't believe in doxing people. If you putting someone's name out so that they can be criticized by other people, one person referred to it as, setting my hordes on folks.
That was the
But
one I did too.
if they'll come to me privately, knowing that I won't out them, like specifically, but it's a lot of gatekeepers. I think that some of the comments that I get from friends will be like, well, I asked them how fast they ran their marathon. A couple of these folks, I know exactly how fast they ran their marathon because I checked their names out on the list, and they finished in 4 hours. They finished in 3:35 or whatever. But there is a class of folks who see Boston as an elite race, and therefore, if you are not in an elite classification, someone who's like running in the it's 3 hours to sub 3 hour range, you should not be on the course. That I had somebody last year tell me that my medal diminishes theirs. Because if they're giving, and somebody just, the fact that the BAA is giving a medal to somebody who finished it in 9 hours and 45 minutes is a problem for the BAA.
Honest to God, the winner was 2:06, I think, right in there.
This year.
Yep.
And that's admirable, but I want to give the parade to the guy who did it in 9 hours. The perseverance for 2 hours and the perseverance for 9 hours and what you have to battle. That's the guy I'm interested in. That's the Boston Marathon.
That's for me and for another 29,500 folks. That's exactly the race. It's for us and for others. It's not.
Don't you find it, Chris? Sorry for interrupting, but don't you find it interesting? Because when people ask me how, and Lou knows never to ask me how I did in terms of time, because I've said this this was my 10th Boston, my 15th overall marathon. Yeah. But I never answer time. First of all, you can look it up. So if you really want to know, go look it up. But I don't answer about the time, not because people are like, oh, embarrassment. No, because one, it's not because of the time. Yeah. It's about me. My 26.2 or 26.7 or however long the traversing the end. It's the same as the person that did it in 2:06. Yeah. It doesn't matter. But I think there's such a here's the psychology piece that I've talked about. There's such a bias for people that do not have any knowledge of really what it's like to run a race or having any of that. So there's tons of people like that. They just, Marathon Monday is let's go down to Boston, drink and watch runners. Right. So, and they don't realize at 2:00 from 2 to 5, you're getting everybody coming in. Like, that's like the pack. Right. And then you've got from 5 o'clock to about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and sometimes 9, you've got I call them the stories, the big stories of like what's going on out there that's really driving this person to finish. And usually, I mean, I would have, if I had been there, I usually always finish and I'll go over right next door to like Atlantic Fish and I'll watch. And then I come out and wait for the back of the packers, the rest of them, because I'm in the back, but I wait for the rest of them because I love watching it and I love hearing the stories and I love giving hugs because I know what it's like to be there. I know what it's like to have last year. I had a really hard year last year because it was so cold for me. Remember, I got frostbitten on my feet. I ended up in medical tent multiple times, and my tracker screwed up, and it was all off, and people thought I quit. So it was, and so then it was, but obviously I came in the amount of time, but people had that whole thing of like, oh, you didn't finish, or no, my tracker broke or whatever happened to it. But it's this mental piece that comes with, I think, lack of knowledge. We're going to go with that. Some ignorance. And then just that overall, like, just not understanding what it is to be in that. And people don't even realize that the people are coming in at 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. They don't realize that we all start at 11, 11:30, 11:45, 12 o'clock because they see everybody finish at 10 that's in the elite and think it's over. Right. But if you're watching on TV, the reason why Boston does the whole thing all day is because they do the early morning, but then they stay on all day because the charity runners come through. They do that on purpose because that's the important piece. And people have asked me, like, why do they televise it all day? because Chicago doesn't do that.
That's what we
New
care
York.
about.
It's
Yeah.
because that's what people care about. They
Yeah.
care about the people that are now coming in the waves, and they don't. And I think the vast majority of people who watch, unless you're a runner and know about it,
Mhm.
they don't really understand. Which is why I think the comments come sometimes. They don't really understand that everything's split into these massive corrals and waves, so that when you're on Hopkinton, you're sitting in a corral of 4,000 people that are going off every 15 minutes, and people don't realize that there's waves and waves of people coming that are starting staggered to do this. And so I think it's a lack of knowledge, lack of education. But then there's just those people that Chris and but I've actually, and that's why I brought it up, is I've never seen some of the comments. I've had some of them to me, but never quite like I've seen with Chris. And I just think he handles them with such grace and dignity, and he never lets them get him down. I love that, because I think that's, I want him to keep going. I want you to keep going, because you have such a presence and a fervor for what you're doing, and I just want to keep supporting that for you.
It'll get in my head a little bit, but again, coming from being a coach's kid, and also, frankly, as a trial attorney, you can't let someone, if you get a bad answer or an answer you don't expect, you can't go, "Ugh," and then the jury sees that happen. Or, if somebody, if there's a mistake or something of that nature, you're on stage and somebody drops a prop, you can't go, "Ugh." If you do that, everybody knows that there's a problem. So for me, this is what I'm experiencing. I want people to know that this is out there, but I'm never going to show that this is something that gets me. I want it out there, and then inside, like I said, I chew on it for a while. I give it half a second of true, do I really belong kind of stuff, and then I move on, because it's all just fuel going forward. And
You belong.
it's ignorance and whatnot, as well as you're talking about, is everybody who runs a 5K on the 4th of July, they all start at the same time, and so they run across and they get the line time and the bib time and all that other stuff, and they figure that every race runs the same way. And there are some marathons that do that, but
Right.
not this one.
Right.
Not this one, not New York. And New York is a whole. You want to take Boston and multiply it times 2, and the crowds times 3. That's a whole nother deal altogether. But it's just it's a once in a lifetime experience, and for me, 4-time experience, and for you, 10.
Are you going to do it now? Are you doing it again?
I will do it. I will run it every year that my body allows me to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to run. I'm going to try to run Chicago in October.
I love Chicago. It's
And
flat.
I've heard that I've heard it's another really flat. It's a flat course, and people I don't drink, but people are like offering you beers and shots on the road, and
They
guys
do.
with sausage sandwiches and stuff like that. It just seems like the environment is going to be like, if you follow golf and you go to the John Deere Invitational, it's like the only place where like the crowds are yelling while people are trying to take a shot.
Yes,
And it's just a madhouse. And as I understand it, Chicago is like a madhouse.
it is. Chicago's fun. So if since this is your first Chicago, it is flat. However, I'm
Okay.
going to give you the however. However, the deceiving part of Chicago is right when you come to about the last 3/4 of a mile.
Right.
You have to come up the hill. It's not really a hill, but at that point it feels like death. And you get to the top of this peak and there's people everywhere and they're screaming, you're almost there.
Right.
But you're really not, because what you can see is over the trees, you can see the finish line like banner, but it looks like that vortex.
Yeah. It's the Citgo sign in Boston. One of the things that I learned first time out is, the Citgo sign. I know that's near Fenway. I'm almost there, and it's 2+ miles away.
Yeah.
So never trust the Citgo sign.
So when you get to the top of that only hill, and it's not a hill, it's literally like a little bridge bump, but it's the only hill on the whole course, and people are like, "You're almost there," and you can see that. It's like, "Oh, you shut up."
People do that along the Boston course, like just as a joke, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're all, just a few more miles." Like, and I'll just yell out, "Liar!"
Well,
I know,
I
know how long this course is.
Have you seen the sign that this annoys? Okay, so I always try to avoid it. I always am like, I divert my eyes because I know it's coming right as you come out of the start line in Boston.
Right.
Within maybe a mile on the right-hand side on a tree,
Yeah.
they post every year this family or whoever they are. I'm like, ugh. It says entering Boston, you're almost
Boston.
done. And it's actually, they made the official sign. I'm always like, I hate that sign. I hate that sign. I hate that sign because
Yeah.
it messes my head. And no, I
Yeah.
can never not see it. I try, but I always see it and then it agitates me for at least another month.
Yeah.
It's awful. So now this is one of my favorite parts of Chris's story this year.
Okay.
Is because I was texting him at 11 o'clock at night on the Saturday night, the night and a half before the marathon, when I was actually still not dead.
Yeah.
But and I'm telling him from my bed, you need to go to bed. You're up too late. You need to go to bed. But so I'm going to have Chris fill it in, but this is my version of the story of Chris has been doing this, I think probably a few times, but my husband, who's from Brockton, Massachusetts, I was like sitting next to him going, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what he's doing. We're going to help him next year. And my husband told me to tell you that today. He's going to come out and help you next year. He'll take over, by the way. So you'll have to like kick him, but he was so excited. So Chris does this awesome thing. He goes and makes what I call a ton of food, all Italian food, like homemade meatballs. And he was doing this all day, and he was doing like lasagnas and all, like, and he puts it all in the back of his trunk. This is what it looks like to me. This is my version of the story. And then he goes out to Brockton and he opens up his trunk, and you donate, like you do a $25 plate. I think I'm getting this right. You do a $25 a plate or more, and you donate to it. And he gives away the amount of plates to houseless people, which I love that term instead of homeless, houseless people. And for the evening, which went into the later evening, which is why I was telling him, you need to go to bed. You're on your feet. Get up. But what an awesome idea. And I think that there should have been more people helping. So I'm going to cajole people this year into next year to be like, hey, we need to go help him and also donate. But it was an awesome idea. And he had, how many plates did you do?
49, almost
49.
Wow.
And he had tons of food. And I think we could do better, people. We could do better. We can get out there and do more. But he has that story, which I now told it, but I want him to tell it. But he has a beautiful story. And this is another reason why I love the heart of why people do charity. I want you to tell your $3 story.
Oh, goodness. So the first marathon macaroni, it was completely serendipity. It's supposed to be an event where folks come to my house and you do the carb loading thing. So I lay out a bunch of different types of stuff. I love to cook and I love to eat. So I'll put out some baked ziti and some stuffed shells and lasagna and my meatballs and sausage and chicken parm, the whole thing. Just lay it all out, pots of gravy, and folks come to the house and they eat and they donate. But if you can't come to the house, you donate your plate. But I hadn't started that way. I just had folks come over the house, and the first time I did it, there's a lot of food left over, and somebody said, what are you going to do with that? And my son, who at the time was 12 years old, he's now 20, started a charity where we go out and we serve the homeless, called Dom's Dimes. And he was the youngest CEO of a nonprofit organization in Massachusetts back when we started. So we're going out and we're giving out blessing bags and things of that nature to folks on the street. And someone said, this should be a Dom's Dimes project where you go out and bring the rest to folks. So I just loaded it in the back of my car and went to a place called Perkins Park in Brockton, which is near the Father Bill's Mainspring shelter. And so folks are living in the park and they're also living in the shelter. And so I brought the food out and we served. And folks just kept coming. And so we kept serving and I got rid of all the food. So the next year, last year's event, I made it so that if you couldn't come, donate your plate. We made a lot of plates and brought it out last year. And so now it's an every year thing for me that either if you come to the house, that's great, fine, we'll feed you. But everything that we make that isn't consumed at the house is going out. So we raised about $1,200 for Mass General just through the Donate Your Plate this year. And so I packed it all up, put it in the back of the Rogue, and laid it all out. And folks just come. That you just yell out, "There's food," and folks will come, and they'll start talking to other folks. And I parked myself near the downtown Because Perkins Park, there are a lot more law enforcement out there now keeping people out of the park because they don't like people who don't have homes. So they want them off the street because let's not keep the streets ugly. So there's a park, or a place near a bridge, near the train bridge in Brockton, where people congregate all night long into the wee hours. And so I parked and pulled up there, and I opened up the trunk, and folks started coming, and there's a young woman, Eileen. She could have been 25. She could have been 65. I know when the street beats on you the way it beats on certain people. I could not have told you. You would have had to cut one of her legs and count the rings to say how old she was, because there was just no other way of saying. And Eileen came over, and she's, you want some food? She immediately clapped back at me and said, "It's not like that canned stuff that they serve up at the shelter is." I'm like, "No, I made it with my own little chubby fingers. I everything is homemade." And so she sidled up and took a plate, and she started yelling out to other people, "Come on, good stuff over here." And I kept losing track of Eileen during the course of the 2 hours plus that I was there, because for want of a better term, Eileen was doing business out there on the street. She was going off in cars with folks and coming back 10 or 15 minutes later. And she did this a few times, and it was kind of obvious the kind of business that she was doing. But each time she went, and she'd come back, and she's a little more tired every time she'd come over. But she made a point of coming over again and drawing people over. And I said, "Are you still hungry? Do you want more?" And she looked at me and she said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'm starved for. I'm starved for some conversation. I want to talk to somebody. Can we talk?" And so we talked. We talked about the marathon. We talked about my kids. We talked about all the things that I do. I didn't ask anything about her, because that's none of my business, really. People want to talk about themselves, they can go ahead and talk. But she asked me questions about me, and so we talked, and we had a conversation. And toward the end of the night, as I was packing stuff up, she came over to me, and she reached into this monstrous bag that she had, and she sort of rummaged around in there, and she pulled out $3 bills, like crumbled in the bottom of her bag. And she said, "You know that there's no way that I can let you go without paying for what you did." And I'm like, "There's no way that I'm taking your money for this. This is a charity. This is me serving, service above self. It's the Jesuit education." And she looked me dead in the eye, and I apologize. I'm not going to say the vulgar term that she used, but she said, "Now I know that you're a classy MFer because you stood out here and talked to me all night, and you're doing all this for these folks. I know you're not going to not take my money if I give it to you." And I said, "Eileen, I'll take your money on one condition. I'm going to turn around. I'm going to donate it to the charity that I'm running for. Is that okay?" And she said, "Okay." And so I took her money and I put it in my pocket, and she just grabbed her bag and walked away. And I have gotten folks who have donated hundreds and hundreds of dollars over the course of the 4 years that I've been running marathons. And hundreds of dollars, $500, $600, 250, whatever it is. $3 is the smallest donation I've ever gotten. And it was perhaps the most impactful $3 I've ever gotten. I can't even fathom what goes through a person who's living the life that she is living, to think of herself at that point where she could have just kept it and used it for whatever it was that she needed to do. And she took it from herself to give to a charity, from a person that she had never met before, who was just out on the street trying to do something good. And she came right back and did something one better. And it's just a tremendous testament to the whole notion of charitable giving, to the whole notion of heart, to the whole notion of serving, that I will never forget that $3 donation. It above, and I'm not saying that the other money isn't important.
No,
Would
right.
never say that. But those $3 meant more in the grand scheme of things from her than it would from someone who has the wherewithal to donate 100 or 200 or 500 or whatever it is, because 3 from her was just a staggering dip into heart.
Well, it's
And
like $1 million give, right?
it is. It's, you look at folks who are, when they're finding millionaires and billionaires and they're finding them $25,000. Well, that's just money from the couch cushions.
Right.
It means a lot more when it's a person who this she may not know what the next day brings in terms of what she's going to be able to do to take care of herself. And yet, rather than think of herself in that moment, she thought of someone else. And that is just I I love words. I love using them. I love writing them. I love speaking them. But I fail when I think about that and I think about what she did in that moment to truly show the example of what it is to give.
And I think to your point, I think that that's one of and why I wanted you to talk about that is I think that really, for me, summarizes why we do the run for charity, that kind of story. Those things happen to us. Those kinds of moments stay in our head when we're running. I haven't had that, but I've had something similar with something else. But those things stay in your head when you're running because you're thinking about that. I don't know what someone at the 3-hour range is thinking, but I know what I'm thinking about when my Achilles starts to hurt or when I don't have water, or I think about those things. I imagine you do too, because they
Yeah.
drive us, they motivate us, they keep us resilient. People will often say like, oh, I don't know, how do you make it that far? Why do you keep going when it's that hot? Why, 2018 when it was death of rain and snow and everything. And I kept saying to you, right, I'm like, I'm going to quit every mile if I'm hypothermic. I was just like, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going. It's not as bad as it could be. It could be worse. I think those things are important for people to understand, especially if people that are listening, that one of my goals today was to say, hey, anybody can get up and off the couch and start doing this. And instead of doing Monday morning quarterbacking towards anybody, like, get up and do this. There's good things in this. It's a really important thing. And I think that, speaking for myself and I think maybe for Chris a little bit, that those kinds of things, stories, people are our why. Well, that's why we go out and run like that. That's why we raise the money. It's not just so that we could have a bib to run on the course, albeit some people might. That's not why we do it. We do it because we know we can help someone, or we've helped someone along the way in some other way that may not have anything to do with actually the race per se, but Eileen is now helped. Eileen will probably never forget that. Eileen will remember that. And obviously Chris will, and you'll remember that too. And next year when you go into it.
When I go back next year, I hope she's there.
Yeah.
And I can tell her what her $3 did, and what it meant. But it's tremendously, tremendously important. You have to, you need that why.
Right.
It's so true. You can't, if you're just thinking about, okay, well, this is the next step, and here's what my nutrition is, and here's what my water stop, and that's great. That's what these folks are doing when they're running to get their personal best.
Right.
That's the big thing. They're out there for a PR, their personal record, or to get their Boston qualifying time, and that's important and that's great. And I'm never going to say anything negative about that, but to get out there, and it's the whole notion of, when you plant a flower, it's a belief in the future. It's a belief in hope. That this is going to grow into something. My team right now, the Mass General team, we've raised over $2 million this year, and it's $40+ million over the course of the life of the team. But to see the kids, I go, when after the marathon is done and after the fundraising is over, I go to the ward, and I get a chance to walk through and meet these kids and see that what my little piece of my why is doing for folks who can't do for themselves, who just, this 5-year-old kid can't get out there and raise money on the road. I can. So why wouldn't I? As long as my legs allow me to do it, as long as my heart continues to beat in my chest, as long as my mind allows me to continue to get up on 2 feet at 4:15 in the morning to go run in the dark and run in the rain and run in the slush and come back in and dry my feet and get out there and do it again, as long as I can do this to serve other people in the doing, I'm going to. That's my why. That's my bottom line. That's where it comes from. If that's any kind of a definition of heart, then so be it. But if anybody else out there is like that, if you have a why, and it doesn't have to be cancer, it doesn't have to be kids, it can be any number of things, any number of charitable organizations out there. Go find them. BAA has 47 charity partners, and then there are another 50 out there that are qualified charities. Go find your why.
Exactly. And I think that's the inspiration for people that, sit and go, I can never do it, but yes, you can. Yes, you can. I tell people all the time in my office, yes, you can. They're like, oh, I would love to run a marathon. I'm like, okay, you want to run a marathon?
Take a step.
So it's exactly. And then I say, do you have a passion for something? And it's the way you start the story and you get them going. So it's coming from that. And that's why I think that your heart and your soul goes into it. And that's what really draws me to you. And I think the shared experience that you and I have very similar in terms of like a lot of our upbringing and stuff and how we go into this. So I have so many more things, but I'm watching the time on the clock that I would love. So I'm going to have you back, which I would love to do so we could talk more things.
Where I am.
But I have to ask. I always ask my guests at the end questions like in acting school.
Okay.
Right. So
you're James Liptoning me now.
I am James Lipton. I do my questions, and I
can't say my favorite swear word.
Plagiarizing from him because I always ask. So, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Your favorite word?
Hope.
Your least favorite word?
Hate.
Your biggest turn on?
The sunrise.
The biggest turn off?
My kids crying.
Your favorite food?
Lasagna is a perfect food because it has all 4 food groups and you can survive on it breakfast, lunch, or dinner. It covers dairy, it covers beef, it covers protein, it covers grains, it covers vegetables if you consider tomato a vegetable. But if not, it's a fruit. So there you go. Lasagna is the perfect food.
I love it. If you could do anything else in the world besides
Chris is one of my people.
What?
Chris is one of my people.
Chris is one of your people. If you could do anything else in the world besides being a lawyer or a professor, what would you be?
An orthopedic surgeon.
Oh,
wow. It was the choice. It was the 2 roads diverging to wood, and I chose the legal path and not the medical path. Other than that, I would teach history in high school.
Okay.
Because we're not. There are a lot of kids out there who I experience now who have no idea about what their rights are, what the rules are, what basic historical events have occurred, and I'm living with one and have been married to one for 11 years now, who every time I'll mention something will say they never taught that to me in school, and I believe her.
Yeah.
Just teach the Constitution, Chris. That's all you got to do.
I've given away over 10. I've given away over 10,000 of them for free. Little pocket constitutions for students in college and grammar school. And if you ask me for a constitution, I'll send it to you, because when you open up a box with a new game or a new video game, or you go buy IKEA furniture and you got the instructions, you don't immediately throw the instructions away and try to wing it. And everybody who doesn't understand the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is winging it. And there are a lot of people out there who would love to tell you what your rights are because they want to keep you under their thumb. And that's not the way we do things. You read the rule book and you follow the rules, and you hold people accountable to follow the rules themselves.
My camera's not on, Chris, but right behind me is a copy of the Constitution.
Amen.
I'm a constitutionalist. Yep.
Amen. It's the Bible for people like me.
Okay. So, and don't worry, but you can say it as long as it's, well, we have to be always within reason just for my show, even though it doesn't really matter, but your favorite curse word.
Motherfucker.
I love it. Awesome.
Didn't even have to give it a thought.
He didn't even say liberal. I was going to go with liberal.
Oh, you are Lou.
Sorry.
Lou.
Sorry.
Z-
Yeah.
Chris, now Lou and I are going to have a moment after the show Geez. Lou and I have definition issues with that word. So
Chris gets it. He got us right at the beginning.
It,
okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Leanne, by the way, says to you, Chris, lasagna, agreed. And then Mary in Florida says, it's shocking what our children do not know about history.
Oh yeah. I just,
Agreed.
I had to explain to, I teach on Saturdays at Milton Academy. I teach a course in trial advocacy and like a mock trial kind of class. But you have to talk about the Constitution and civil rights and stuff like that when you're dealing with this kind of stuff. And I asked one of my precursor questions to get their brains going. I asked them the baby Hitler question. Like, if I put you in a time machine and put you in a room with baby Hitler, what do you do with baby Hitler in 1905? And one of the kids said to me, "Who's Hitler?"
I know.
No.
This is a fifth grader who said to me, a smart fifth grader, like gifted student fifth grader that I'm teaching, "Who's Hitler?"
Everything going on in the Middle East, and that's the question.
In other situations where people had asked, like if I posted something like that and they didn't get it, in my college class, I would just walk out into the hall and scream. But in front of a group of fifth and sixth graders, I can't walk out into the hall and scream. So I had to give a lecture about who Adolf Hitler was, and they said, "Oh, he's the Jew-hating guy." Yeah, that one. That's you really should think about that, and just remember. And then one of the other kids said, "Idiot, he was in Indiana Jones. Don't you remember?"
Oh my God. I love the frame of reference.
That's their focus of reference, that he was in, The Last Crusade in Indiana Jones.
Yes.
Me, Chris, the headache I get with the Constitution is someone brings up the 3/5 clause and tries to explain what they think that is. And it's like, my mind just breaks.
Yeah. It just, I actually, that was a question on one of my exams. And what is the 3/5 clause? And they had no earthly clue after we had discussed it. And the answer actually was, it had it had 3/5 in the answer. It was a multiple choice question, and that they believe that anyone other than a white landowner was worth 3/5 of a person for voting purposes, and they didn't get the answer correct, even though I gave it to them.
Put it in the answer.
I put 3/5 in the correct answer and still didn't get it. And
they identify that as institutional racism, and it's like, it's the first chop at the tree of slavery. It's the exact opposite of what you think it is.
Well, clearly we need to have Chris back on to talk about the Constitution. And he also has another good story that we didn't even get to, because I don't even know the story. I just happened to read about it in a news article that I believe he got shot in the hand.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So we have to have him back so we can hear about how he got shot in the hand.
Good. We'll talk Second Amendment.
Shot in the Bronx.
and then Lou will talk about the Second Amendment with you.
We're the worst shot in the Bronx. He had 350 pounds of lawyer to hit, and he hit me in the hand. Worst shot in the Bronx.
And then you moved to Massachusetts. He lived in New York. He said, "I got shot. I'm out."
2 weeks later, my wife at the time, I called her from the hospital, told her I got shot. 2 weeks later, she took a job in Massachusetts and said, "When you're ready to come up, you come up." So
there's that.
That was that.
Okay. So, well, unfortunately, the time on the wall says I have to end, and I'm so sorry that I have to end, because I love this. And so, but Chris and I will be back next year to run the Boston Marathon. It will be his 5th, my 11th.
Yep.
Right? Am I correct?
Yep.
5th? 11th?
5th for me. Yep.
Yep. And we will, I hope that you and I will be able to do this again. And I'm going to help, as I always do, when I find great charities and great people who do great work. I always try to promote. So I will make sure that I do that. But you've been an amazing guest, and I've loved having you, and you're an inspiration, and I love following you. And thank you so much for being here. And when we jump off the air, just stay on really quick so that I can at least say goodbye to you. But for everybody else, thank you for supporting me over the past week, and all the lovely, nice, supportive, beautiful things you've sent, you've said, you've called, you've texted, you've done. It's been wonderful, and I appreciate that. And number 10 in the books, and on to 11.